Our guest today is Kyle Hoffmann, Chief Engineer and Studio Manager at NRG Recording. In case you don't know what NRG Recording is, I mean, you probably know, but in case you don't, it's a studio where pretty much everyone you've ever heard of has made a record there. If you look at the credits, it's pretty remarkable. And also, if you look at Kyle's credits, it's very impressive as well. I just went to the usual places like Muso and did some research, and I found, credits that include Youngblood, Bruce Springsteen, Earth, Wind and Fire, Zebrahead, Bush, Beyonce, Rob Zombie, Escape the Fate. It goes on and on. It's a very impressive list. And then if you look at the people who have recorded at NRG with different people, it's even crazier. So I'm super excited to welcome Kyle to the show today. We have a lot of questions for you, Kyle, and I'm very, very grateful that you took the time to be here and let us pick your brain a little bit. And so welcome to the Self-Recording Band podcast.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I'm as always not here by myself. I'm doing this with my friend and co-host Manel Espinosa Berenguer from Spain. Hello, Manel. How are you doing?
Hello, Benedict. I'm doing great. And as I always say, I'm really happy to be back here one more week.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. And we had a little bit of a break before we switched this to an interview-only format. So we're really, really excited. If you're new to this show, this is the Self-Recording Band podcast. My name is Benedict Hein. I'm a mixing engineer. And I also run this platform, the selfrecordingband.com, where we offer coaching and we do this podcast. And we have amazing guests that are very gracious and with their time and share their knowledge with our audience. So hopefully you can learn a thing or two here today from Kyle. I'm pretty sure you can. So Kyle, beyond the credits, we'll see. Yeah, beyond the credits that I just mentioned, which is a really impressive list that was not at all complete. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? Like, what are you doing? What does it mean to be like a studio manager and also the chief engineer, just for people to get some context of what your day-to-day looks like?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I would just say, wearing a lot of different hats at the same time. I kind of came up. I started here. I'll just start at the beginning. I started here in 2008. I moved out to LA and I started here as an intern, mopping floors, scrubbing toilets for free, traditional intern stuff, hazing. We got beat up a little bit. After about, I would say, 6 months of that, it was only supposed to be 3, but after 6 months of that. I got hired as a runner, totally traditional studio route. I was a runner for about 1.5 to 2 years or so, and then I started transitioning into becoming an assistant engineer, working with the owner, mixer, producer Jay Baumgartner. He's produced and mixed a lot of the stuff that's on the walls here at NRG. And so I was his mix assistant for a while, and I was also assisting on bigger sessions. And then after that, it just kind of, snowballed into I became Jay's engineer. We started working together on a lot of different stuff. That was the Bush album. We did a bunch of other things too together. And after that, I was still working as an assistant for other producers that came through the studio and started to build my own independent career. And then after that, just kind of went freelance a little bit, engineering, mixing, production. And then eventually our original chief engineer, Wade Norton, he helped build this place. He kind of semi-retired and I took over all the technical maintenance from him. So I started maintaining the Neves and all the gear, all the amps, and we have a crazy guitar amp collection here. So if the console works, it's because I pay attention to it, and if it's broken, it's because I didn't pay attention to it. Then I started doing that, and then eventually, it just kind of took over the whole place as needed. And so I've been, handling bookings and managing the studio for the last 1.5 years or so.
While still engineering.
Yeah. I actually just Jay and I are working on an album together right now. And then I just finished mixing a project a few months ago. So yeah, I have to pinch myself sometimes, but also, I got to stay busy and kind of keep things flowing,
Totally, yeah. Thank you for the background information. Also interesting to hear that you had the typical sort of, or maybe what used to be the typical kind of path of like intern to assistant to engineer kind of thing. It seems to be a little less common these days, mainly because I think big studios, big commercial facilities are a little less common, or unfortunately there's not too many out there anymore. But yeah, you went through that path. But you also, I saw, and correct me if that's wrong, but I saw that you went to Berklee College of Music.
I did, yeah. I left that detail out. So yeah, I met a lot of really great people there too. In fact, one of the reasons why I'm here in the first place is because of one of my mentors at Berklee, Bert Price. He's the chief engineer there, and he's the head of the maintenance department, does all the studio like technical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And when I told him I was moving out, I worked for him on the Berklee tech crew, which is a really cool gig at the school. It's like a work study job where I learned how to like calibrate tape machines and work on gear, and it was like little things here and there, but it was a good primer into like the real world.
Yeah.
And I told him I was coming out here, and he was like, "Oh man, you got to go to NRG. They have the best parties." So
yeah.
that's kind of why it's one of the reasons why I came here. I mean, obviously the studio kind of speaks for itself too, but yeah, I just thought that was kind of a fun little anecdote.
Totally. And it's interesting you say that this is a great primer like for the real world, because this is precisely, and I don't want to talk shit about like traditional music education, but this is precisely what a lot of people that went that route, like that path, are complaining about, that there's sometimes not really there's a lot of theory and a lot of stuff you learn, but they're lacking like they're not working with people sometimes that have actually made records or are actively making records, and there's this disconnect between what happens at school versus what happens in the real world. So it's interesting to me that you say it was different in this case. And of course, Berklee has a great reputation and all of that. But yeah, still interesting to hear, because I don't have an opinion because I never went to any of these schools, but I hear polar opposite opinions from people. Like some are absolutely happy and glad that they did it and they got their introduction through the school, and others say, well, I learned a lot, but it had nothing to do with what I was doing later, So that was interesting to hear.
Yeah, for me, it was more, Berklee was amazing. I had a great experience there, and I still keep in touch with a lot of my friends and students that were there when I went there. And then my professors too, and a lot of the people working out here in LA are Berklee alum as well. So like we have a pretty good community. Yeah, Berklee was great. I mean, obviously it doesn't prepare you for everything. I think one of the things about schools like that is they tend to kind of, when you're 21 and you're going through this program, they kind of tend to like be like, oh yeah, once you graduate, you're going to be producing Grammy-winning records, you know what I mean? And it's just not the case unless you're just a badass and you're doing it all by yourself, which a lot of people do. So I think that might be more of the disconnect where, you start working professionally and you realize like, oh, there's like a long climb to the top, and, you have to form relationships and you have to really work on your craft. Like you don't just come out of school knowing how to really make a record. I learned 90% of what I know from the different producers and engineers that I've worked with over the years, including Jay. Like I've learned so much from that guy, and still do every day, Yeah. So I think it's easy to come out of school thinking you know everything and wonder why you're not getting the gigs,
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally get that. And it's like, I don't know anything else personally, because all I've learned was all through mentors and like people working in studios showing me how it's done and all that, because I'm not in a major music city. I'm in the middle of nowhere, built my little audio business here. And all I had was like mentors and people in studios that I traveled to and learned from. So that's really all I know. But also what I hear a lot from people is that and I actually did the same when I hired my first employee who started as an intern here as well, is like that they would much rather have someone with the right mindset and of course musical talent and like willingness to learn and just that drive, but without the knowledge and the skills yet. They would rather hire someone like that than compared to someone who has a lot of knowledge, but also they have to unlearn a bunch of things and learn completely new ways, or maybe are too arrogant or not open enough to just learn new approaches. I've heard that a lot of times, and I did the same thing. I mean, Thomas, when he came here, he didn't know nothing. He knew something, but what was much more important was his attitude and his just the way he made himself useful from day one. And just he showed me that, like, I knew immediately that if I hire this guy, like, this is going to be valuable for both of us. It's a win-win scenario. And I didn't care about the skills really at this point when I hired him. And so,
yeah, I 100% agree with that. When I look for people to bring onto the team too, like, you know, it's all about attitude and drive and personality, and just like nobody cares how great your snare drum tone is. Like, you know, as a runner, as an intern, as an assistant, like you need to be able to, you know, interface with the clients and make sure they're comfortable, make sure they're taken care of. You know, it's a service industry. So if you come into a studio like this, you know, thinking that you're just going to jump into the engineer chair and start doing that, like, as an employee, it doesn't really make any sense. So I agree with you. Yeah, you definitely look for people that like have drive and they want to learn and they're eager. They kind of take care of themselves a little bit, you know, figure stuff out on their own. Like, I love that, man. That's so nice when somebody's just like, hey, I figured out this thing I didn't know how to do like an hour ago. It was great. So,
yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, totally. It's the best when they do that. Yep. Has it, and we're going to switch topics soon, but like just one more thing on this. Has this traditional path that you went through, has this changed a little bit now? Like, do you still have that where interns come in and they, like you said, mop the floors, do the typical runner intern stuff, and then they work their way up? Is it still the same, or has this changed a bit in recent years?
It's only really changed in the sense that, you know, we do a first school credit. So we work with a lot of the schools around. And, you know, a lot of them have internship requirements in order to graduate. So we do it that way. But apart from that, traditionally, like, it really hasn't changed too much, the path. It's just the business in general has kind of changed a little bit. So the things that were happening when I came up as an intern are just different now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that was one thing I wanted to get into as well, because to me, it's like fascinating. I'm super glad to see that places like NRG still exist, and from the outside, at least, apparently also still thrive and work out and all that. But also, it's fascinating to me from the perspective of someone who's running like one small room, very little overhead, you know, and all that kind of stuff, how it's possible to keep something like NRG afloat and, like, you know, keep it booked, you know, that it still works in 2026. And maybe you've changed the model or you do different things now. I have no idea, but like it's fascinating and also really cool to see that it's still possible to run a studio like that. That is actually something I wanted to ask about anyways. Like, what's your opinion on that?
Sure.
And what you have seen change in the past, you know, almost 20 years?
I've seen a lot of change. Yeah, things are just different now. It is still possible to do it. It's way more difficult, I think, than it used to be. For one, budgets have shrank quite significantly. It's pretty uncommon to have like a long-term lockout session. Back in the day, they used to last 2, 3, 4 months, sometimes a year, you know. And so that's becoming less and less common. Mostly people will come in for a day or two, and then kind of go maybe finish stuff at home or go to a smaller studio once they got their drums tracked, or, you know, kind of the stuff that we're really known for, our drum rooms and our guitar collection and our amp collection. That stuff has been here since day one. And I personally think we have the best sounding drum rooms in town.
Anyone who's
I'm
ever
not
used
biased,
drum sample,
but yeah.
of course not. Anyone who's ever used drum samples probably has, or most people have heard these rooms in some way,
Yeah.
just because of this late samples. You
Well,
know what I mean?
it's built into
Like,
Trigger, yeah. So if
Yeah,
you use Trigger,
yeah.
you use Studio A all the time.
Yeah, I knew what that sounded like and heard this before I even knew what NRG really was. For me, at the beginning, NRG when I started, when was it? 2009 or 2008 or something? When I think I got the samples on CD still.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just the part of the file name that it's like NRG before I even knew what that was. But many people have heard the rooms for sure.
Oh yeah. It's built. If you look in any of the Trigger presets, if you see a fader that says, I think it just says NRGA.
Yeah.
Or it says NRG room or something like that.
So it has something like that.
Yeah,
remember,
that's where those samples were recorded.
Yeah, totally. No, and that's the big advantage, one of the many advantages of like a proper studio. But like those rooms is really something that there's no real substitute for. Like a really great studio room is like so invaluable. And even like you said, I'm not surprised to hear that. And I've done that before a lot of times on records that I've worked on, is that you go specifically for the drums, you go to a room like that, track the drums there, and then maybe do the rest elsewhere. But that is it just makes such a big difference, especially with drums. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's best to do, especially if you're doing live recording, I think it's best to do it in a big room like this. Again, I may be a little biased, but I think it's just, the experience of playing together. I think a lot of other producers would agree too. Like, the experience of playing together in a room and getting like the raw energy of the band actually reacting to each other, which happens less and less these days too. But I think that's really valuable, and it's definitely a sound. It's definitely a different sound than, recording things one at a time in a small room.
Also requires a different level of skill in many cases.
Yeah, in a lot of cases. But even still, drums in a big room like this, there's really no substitute for it. You can try to add reverbs and stuff all day, but if you really want the big room sound, like there's only one way to get it.
Yeah, the closest you can get to maybe is like adding room samples maybe instead of like artificial reverb, but still it affects everything. It also affects how the close mic sound, not just the additional.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's not to knock smaller rooms. Like if you if you want a small room sound, then like obviously do that. But all the records that kind of came out of here back in the heyday, they all have that big room sound. The drums are massive, the guitars are massive, and a lot of that has to do with our specific guitars and our specific amps and our specific room,
Yeah, no, totally. And if you look at like when you say back in the heyday, I mean, I'm not sure how you would define that, but if I look at some of the records that like the bands that many people will be familiar with, it's like, especially in the rock world, like if you look at the website credits there, you find Linkin Park, Red Hot Chili Peppers, The Offspring. There's all kinds of like Papa Roach, Slayer, Smashing Pumpkins. There's like Bon Jovi, all these like rock, Motorhead. Like there's rock history has been made in these rooms in this studio. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, even going back further than that, we did Hootie and the Blowfish, their big Cracked Rear View, their big album, Tracy Chapman. Fiona Apple did When the Pawn here. So, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't really fit into the kind of like nu metal thing that we're mostly famous for. But going back before that was really a thing, there were a lot of other great records done here.
Sure, yeah. And Manel, you want to say something? Sorry.
Talking about that, because like you basically just said that like the studio went through a golden era in those years, probably, right?
Sure.
So my question is, how do you manage like keeping the fire, like the motivation after all those years, and how the music industry is changing?
Don't take no for an answer, I guess. I think, things always go through cycles, right? So, right now we're actually entering into a new kind of rock era, which is really cool. We just did the Youngblood Aerosmith project here. We did some of that here. We also did some of that with his thing with Smashing Pumpkins, and noticed after that, kind of like a lot of people started reaching out specifically for our brand of rock, which is kind of making a little bit of a resurgence at the moment, which is great for us. But before that, it's like, it's all relationships, right? So you work with different labels and A&Rs, and it might be hip hop, it might be R&B, it might be orchestra dates, it might be, it could be anything. People come here to film a lot. People come here to shoot music videos and stuff like that, because Studio B specifically like has that Moroccan look to it. It's dressed up really nice. So we do a lot of that as well. So it's just about kind of being able to do anything and be more diverse, That being said, the kind of specific brand of rock that we've been known for here, like it's a really specific sound that you kind of have to know how to do it, And I just, over the years, had the chance to learn from the best people that have done it. Jay is probably the best, if not, top 3. You have to use certain things in certain ways, and there's certain techniques that don't really exist in other styles of music, right? So, it's kind of just keeping that alive. A lot of the sound of this place came through the engineers that worked here over the years, and a lot of in-house guys that were working on a lot of those records back in the day. Producers would use the in-house engineer sometimes. So, a lot of those guys had a lot to do with the way that those records sound.
Yeah.
And so how would you define that sound you just mentioned?
Yeah, it's kind of tough, but it's like, if you're talking specifically about the sort of like heavy nu metal-y kind of thing that we do, a lot of it is obviously our rooms, the big giant drums, kind of the way that they're recorded too. It's pretty specific with the mic setup and the way the room is laid out and things like that. It's pretty specific. And then the other really big one was our modded JCM 800s, specifically with our black Les Paul custom. That was a big part of the sound, and we still have it and we still use it every day. That's, in my opinion, the only real way to get the authentic guitar sound from that era. And I mean, there's obviously ways you can emulate it and get close to it, but that's it. You plug that thing in and it's just like, oh yeah, that's the sound. So you kind of have to come here to do it. Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Speaking of new metal, by the way, I completely missed that in my introduction here. I got introduced to you, like I knew NRG, but I heard your name from our friends in Steppo, who they are a new metal band from close to LA, not directly LA, I think, but like I've been working with them for a couple of years now, and they made the debut record I think 25 years ago or something, like early 2000s at NRG.
I think it was around 2001 or 2 or something like that.
Yeah. And they said like multiple times actually. So thank you, shout out to Steppa. Thank you guys for that recommendation. Multiple times actually, they were like, you got to contact Kyle. Like you got to bring him onto the podcast. And they're listeners of the show, and they wanted you on. And like I thought it was a great idea. So like how do you know those guys personally, or like how was that? Not really. No,
it's funny. Like I kind of, when I took over the Instagram here a few years ago, they just started liking all of our, all my stuff, and then we just started chatting, and that's kind of how it all happened. But yeah, their stuff is exactly that sound. Yeah, like in fact, if you probably talk to them, you probably use that guitar and that amp.
Could very well be. Yeah, totally. Yeah, very interesting, and back then.
sorry to interrupt, but yeah,
No,
back then too, you know, it was before my time. So back then there were some different people around. Yeah, 2000 was gonna be, that would have been like Hybrid Theory, Linkin Park's first album. What else would have been happening around that time? Papa Roach was a little bit earlier. Korn was about a year before that, maybe. So, yeah, they were right in there.
Yeah, and speaking of the kind of resurgence or like rock coming back, and new metal in and of itself also has kind of this resurgence there a little bit. But do you feel like I don't know if that's true. It's just my feeling that I get from the artists I work with and the people I talk to who listen to music. Is like it's almost like the pendulum is swinging back a little bit after like a decade of two of quote unquote perfection, and now with AI even worse, and like all of that. And it seems like more people want to hear a band and not so much what happens after the recording and all the additional stuff. And I find that pretty fascinating and also cool, because that's what I'm all about and how I grew up. And like I'm not against super polished records. There's cool things in all kinds of genres, but I feel like there's almost like this. It's kind of swinging the other way now, and people crave the connection with artists and hearing a real band and the little imperfections. And like even at live shows, I watched the Foo Fighters at a big stadium 2 weeks ago, where what happened on that stage was pretty much exactly what would happen in a small club. It's like it was an amp and a cab and a mic in front of it, and like no backing tracks, no nothing, and like just turned up loud in a big stadium. But it was very simple, and people seem to really enjoy that again, which I think is great.
Yeah, I think it's making a little bit of a comeback. In my opinion, I think people maybe are just kind of getting sick of hearing the same thing over and over again. You know, so like I said, it comes in cycles. But yeah, I'm noticing that too. It is a little bit difficult to kind of unlearn some of those things too. Like, you know, how much imperfection do you leave in? You know, at what point is it sloppy, and at what point is it like, you know what I mean? So
exactly,
as a producer, you kind of have to have that, you know, you have to have that taste to kind of have the right amount, you know.
Many people use that as an excuse for not playing properly, or like, you know, like, where like there's a line, there's like, like you said, at some point it becomes a distraction or an obvious mistake, or like the feel's not right anymore. But a little bit of that might be cool, and like, the producer's job is to have that taste.
Yeah, and the big thing for us is like when you're making a record, like something that was typically to come out of here, like you spend more time tuning the guitar than you do playing it. Yeah. So, you know, if your playing's not tight, then you're still spending, you know, you're still tuning in between every take. So it's you know, it's a lot of work.
You guys have the Evertune bridges on your guitars?
I don't actually, but you know, they have their thing. There is a little bit of, how do I say, like, you know, obviously a little bit of beauty in the slight imperfection. The one time I've used an Evertune guitar, it felt too perfect. And so like maybe for modern metal bands, like that's cool, but for kind of like more grungy, heavier rock stuff, I don't think it's really, in my opinion, I don't think it's really the best way to go. But yeah, it's still a lot of work. So I think it's good that, you know, young kids and are getting back into guitars and getting back into rock music and stuff like that, because it's definitely, you know, it's definitely becoming a lost art, and it's cool that they're getting excited about it, because we need it, you know, we need it to keep going.
We absolutely need it, Yeah, the way you just talked about like how much time you spend tuning guitars and stuff like that. With everyone who's ever been to a professional recording session in rock, like knows why you're saying that and what that means. But like, is it the same kind of, or even more maybe, the same amount of effort that goes into setting up drums, picking the drum skins, tuning them, and all that kind of stuff? Because I feel like both of those things in the DIY world are things that people totally miss or like ignore, and you can tell, and it makes it so hard to mix these things. If like I couldn't care less about mics as long as they have a setup that just sounds good, like the player of course in the room, but also just the tuning of the drums, the choice of drum heads, and just a lot of people don't put enough thought into that, I feel like. So I'm wondering what your take is on that, because I've also seen sessions where it's like super quick and still sounds good, but like, yeah, I was just curious about how you guys approach that.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on if you're talking specifically about drums. It really depends on the drummer first.
Yeah.
Are they able to hit consistently? How hard did they hit? That tells you a lot about what kind of heads you're going to choose.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have different tones between coated and clear heads, different drum sizes, different compositions. We have a couple of drum kits here one that we've been using for the last 10, 15 years, which is a mid-60s Ludwig 24-inch bass drum, like 13, 14, 16, 18-inch, like big drums, from the 60s. And they sound amazing. But they're a little bit cranky. Like, they're hard to tune. So recently for this last project, we actually just, another reason to come here, we just got a new DW Collector Series kit that's fantastic. 2022, 12, 13, 14, or 12, 10, 12, 14, 16, I believe. Great, amazing drum kit, that more like modern maple sound. So we have like the vintage thing, and now we have the modern thing. So that's a big part of it. Drum tuning is a huge part of it. That's why we work with, whenever possible, we work with professional drum techs.
I was about to ask.
Yeah, like some of the best guys are here in LA. Shout out to Mike Fasano. He's the man. We use him all the time. And he actually has been working with us for the last 30, 35 years, since the beginning. He may have actually done the first session here too as a drum tech. So maybe he can correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, he's been working here forever. He's one of the best in the business, and we still use him to this day. So that's a big part of it too. What else? Like, there's so much that goes into it before you even think about a microphone. And I think that like a lot of young engineers get this idea that, they get kind of like locked into the gear thing, which is obviously important, but you obviously start at your source material, right? So if your drums don't sound good, your mics aren't going to sound good.
Yeah.
Right. So for the young engineers out there that are trying to figure it out, like, just get an SM57. Don't worry about the gear. Make sure your drums sound good,
Yeah. Coming from the man who's right now on a podcast speaking into a vintage Used 47, into a vintage Neve, into an LA2A.
Yeah, well,
but you're totally right.
If you smoke them if you got them, right? So yeah, like we've got all that stuff too, and it really does make a difference. I'm not trying to. I'm a gearhead. I'm a gear nerd through and through. So, like, I'll always be advocating for cool stuff.
Yeah, but I totally hear you. No, but it's an important message. So you're totally right. That's an important message to prioritize the source, the song and the playing more than anything,
Yep.
and then what happens in front of the mic in terms of the instruments. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything after that is just an aesthetic choice, right? So if you're good at what you do, you can make those choices. You can make your drums sound however you want them to sound. You can move your room mics around, or you deaden the room, or you liven it up, depending on what you want sonically, So you can make a lot of different choices that way. The other thing I'll do too is like, don't sleep on changing your cymbals. Like, if you want to make sure your cymbal sound is right going into the microphone. Like, I don't care what mic you use.
Yeah.
Mics are so good now that, you could use just 414s as overheads. They're not crazy expensive. They sound great. But like, your cymbals are going to make way more of a difference, in my opinion, than like a 414 versus like a U67 or something like that.
Yeah. Also, it's the one thing you can't replace with samples later, or like not easily. It's another thing where, like, if all else fails, there's always ways to work around little like weird sounding shells, even though it's not ideal. But the cymbals and the entire image of the kit and that stuff that becomes part of the drum sound.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the more I don't want to say difficult, but it's one of the more difficult things to get right.
Yeah.
You know?
And difficult to fix in the mix as well. Like if the cymbals sound crappy and like you got a bunch of harsh top end or just not the right cymbals for the job. A lot of times in the heavy stuff that I work on, people choose cymbals that are way too small, but like then super thick, and you end up with this like, it's so hard to make them work in the mix and like,
Well, plus one of the big parts of our sound too is using wide spaced pair overheads.
Yeah.
For different genres of music, you know, sometimes I like a stereo mic in the middle, sometimes it's mono, sometimes it is what it is. But for like the heavy kind of NRG rock sound that we do, you know, it's a wide spaced pair that are like over the cymbals. So they're more like cymbal mics than they are overheads, if that makes sense.
That's an interesting topic.
So yeah,
it's interesting you say that.
Just kind of a part of the sound, you know.
Yeah, interesting you say that, because that's also a debate that I'm not a black or white person when it comes to anything audio, because it always depends on the song, and there's always so many ways to do it. But like this debate between like, are the overheads like kit mics that capture everything, like and including the shells, and like is the entire image of the kit really that important, or are they really cymbal mics and you get the majority of the rest from the close mics? And like, so it's interesting you say that in your approach they're primarily cymbal mics. But I mean, still the rest matters. But yeah, just your thoughts on that. And it's probably, it depends is the answer probably.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It totally depends on the genre and the style of music that you're doing. Like I would say for jazz or something country, you know, you probably don't want a super wide spaced pair of cymbal mics. You know, you probably want something tighter that picks up the whole image of the kit. But yeah, for like rock and metal, at least in my experience, I think the cymbal mic thing is more the way to go. Because you get, you know, in a metal band or something, you don't really necessarily need that perfect picture of the drum kit, because you got 10 guitars and people screaming, and, you know, it's like your natural drum kit sound is going to go away anyway. So. And
also, if the drummer is hitting hard and the kit is tuned in a way that you would typically do it for something like that, you're gonna have a shit ton of snare and stuff anyways in the overheads, and so it still matters to have that kind of somewhat in the center of the image, I guess, and like make sure the phase is correct and all that. And you're gonna have it's not that they're gonna just pick up cymbals; it's gonna become part of the sound in some way, anyways. And there's also this little bit of delay is part of the depth that comes from that is part of the sound too. So yeah, it's not that there's going to be no snare in the overheads, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, your snare is right next to it. So
exactly. Yeah.
You know, but it's a little bit less important to have that total like perfect image, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Cool. One thing that you touched on that I have a follow-up question on is you kept saying, you know, the NRG sound or the kind of rock sound we do and all that. And yeah, there is this thing that NRG is kind of known for. But how do you personally feel about, as a producer or engineer, about like your sound or the sound of the studio or the sound of the producer or whatever, versus like being more invisible and not having a signature sound and trying to like, you know, be really transparent and just, you know, do it differently for every artist? Because there's these two types of producers and mixers out there. There's some that have such a clear signature sound that I can immediately tell it's probably done by this person. And then sometimes I'm not that sure. There's some out there who are more like invisible. So what's your take on that?
Man,
is it an advantage to have a signature sound kind of as a producer?
I guess I have to keep saying the same thing. Like, it really depends, right? Yeah. Like,
I expected that.
You know, I like to think of myself as a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. Like, I've worked on stuff in pretty much every genre. You know, I just recorded and mixed a jazz album. I just did an old school kind of hip hop R&B thing. I've worked, one of my big clients, Kareem Riggins, he's a amazing jazz drummer and hip hop producer. And like, I've done a bunch of records with him and Common. And so like, that's that kind of old school Detroit style hip hop thing. And he definitely has a signature for sure as a producer. But I don't know, for me, I feel like I don't really tend to stay within one genre, if that makes sense. So I don't know, I guess being adaptable and using your ears. Really, it's like, I don't know if that answers your question. It was
it kind of does. There's two angles here. The one is like, just if you have a signature sound, if you think that, or if you're trying actively to not have that, there's these different extremes, of course, and it's funny to me is like, I am a big like Steve Albini fan, and when one of his things was always, I'm not trying to have a sound, and I do whatever the artist wants, and he's like the service provider, trying to stay away and like out of the way, and yet, in my opinion, his records definitely had a sound, and like even though he tried hard not to. So I'm like kind of interested. That's the one angle, and then the other thing is, from a business perspective,
like he had his signature sound was more to do with his engineering, really.
Yeah, and the rooms also.
Yeah, in the rooms. Yeah. So like, but yeah, I guess I get what you're saying, stay out of the way, but that was more his engineering, his engineering style, if, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you can't help, I mean, you just have a taste, and everybody hears things differently, and everything goes through that unique filter that only you have, and so naturally there will be some sort of thing that you do. But then the other angle is like, from a business perspective, I wonder sometimes, is it an advantage to like fully focus on just one thing and also develop your signature sound and then try to track these types of bands, or is it better to be able to do all kinds of things and like not have that? It's and obviously again there are people who are successful with both of these things. So
totally, I mean, I think for me it's more valuable to be diverse and like adaptable. But as an engineer, I'd like to think that I have a signature sound, maybe, but I don't really try to do that. It's sort of just, for me, it's more like serve the band, serve the artist. If somebody hires me to engineer something, like I want to make sure that I'm doing that right by the artist or the producer in that sense as an engineer, get what they want. And obviously I'll have my opinion, but at the end of the day, it's like, if they want something to sound a certain way, I think it's important to be able to adapt to that and like make it how they want it, right?
Yeah.
As a producer, I try to maybe take the same approach where, I want to help the artist kind of make their vision, but also you have to be, you have to kind of guide them and make sure that it's done well. And a lot of times with bands, they don't have a whole lot of experience in the studio, and so you kind of have to help them through that process. I think as a producer, that's pretty important.
Yeah, interesting. This is also, I'm glad you mentioning this as well, because in the DIY kind of self-recording world that we are also in with this podcast, the difference between producer and engineer is sometimes also not that clear to people, where we kind of, have to explain that, because in many modern, like smaller budget scenarios, the producer and the engineer are kind of one.
They're the same person.
Sometimes even the artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. But traditionally it's not. And so when you say, as the engineer, you are trying to get the producer's vision across, and or the artist or whoever is involved. That's important for people to understand that there is a difference, and that when you're engineering doesn't mean you're producing the record necessarily.
Yeah, I tend to do both too. So sometimes I'm doing both on a project. Sometimes I'm just the engineer. I think it's really important to recognize the difference in those situations, and as the engineer, you want to make sure you're helping the producer, not like interjecting your opinions into the mix too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You kind of have to know when to shut up and know when to speak.
Skill.
It's it's an important skill that I don't think enough people have.
Yeah.
So it's just, sometimes you gotta know when to stay out of the way and know when to speak up. If you see something happening and you're like, oh, maybe this is kind of going sideways a little bit, you can kind of, maybe get it back on track and guide things.
Yeah. Just
without being overbearing, I guess, is
being able to read a room and like know your place and your role, and like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
That's a big
important.
part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably something that home recording artists don't really get. They don't really understand it because they don't experience it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not blaming them. Like, that's why I keep repeating these things. It's not that I think our audience is stupid, quite the opposite. But
No,
like,
no.
it's just, if you've never experienced it, like, how would you know? And I remember when I started out without that professional experience, I didn't know so many things, and I had no clue how professional records were made. And so it's just And I think it's even valuable to separate the two, like producing and engineering, even if you're doing it all yourself, because I feel like you have to wear these different hats and like switch perspectives. It's kind of hard to do. It's one of the biggest challenges if you do it yourself. I feel like that you have this technical side, and then you have the big picture producer creative vision side of things, and you gotta. Those are different jobs, and if you wear all these hats at the same time, sometimes things can be a little. Yeah, it can be a little difficult, and I think it's, even if you do it yourself, there's value in separating the two a little bit to a degree, or maybe if you do it with a group of people, maybe one is more the producer type and someone else is more the technical kind of engineer, whatever. I think it's just important to know the difference, I feel like.
Yeah, I think so. You tend to lose perspective if you're doing everything. That's why, like, if I'm engineering a record, I don't always want to be producing it. I don't always want to be, and if I'm doing both of those things, I definitely don't want to mix it. And I know there's some people that are very successful at that. I mean, Andy Wallace was like one of the best.
Yeah.
But there's like 2 of those people in the world. And I'm not one of those people. Like, being able to mix a record that I've both produced and engineered is like insane to me. Because you lose perspective, and it's like you gotta get another set of ears on it,
Yeah.
In my opinion. And that, that also being said, I would really encourage people to get out of the bedroom. And, I mean, I know obviously funding is limited for a lot of people too, but you're going to spend $3,000 on that interface that you want, right? Get your friends together, find a studio, spend that money on the studio, go in, have the experience, even if you do it once,
Yes, for the learning experience.
Like, just do it. It's money well spent, to get an idea of what it's like to work in a big room with a big console and a bunch of mics live open on the floor. It's just an experience you can't get any other way. And, I think that'll help people, when they go back into the home studio and they are doing things, piecemeal, one at a time or whatever, self-producing, self-engineering. Like, I think you'll take a lot away from that experience to bring back into your world. So I know studio time is expensive, but it's totally worth it to just at least do it once,
Yeah. I completely agree. That was part of the reason why, or the main reason why, and I know it's not the same than being in the room and going to an actual studio, but this is the main reason why we stopped with this platform. A while ago, we stopped like selling video courses, although I still think you can learn a lot from that. But like, what we do is this personal coaching thing where even if you can't be in the room, you can still work directly with people who can offer that second pair of ears, who can listen to your stuff, who can tell you, find out the best spots in the room for your microphones and like all that kind of stuff. And so much more valuable than just watching a video and then trying to make sense of it. Mm-hmm. It's like, and even better if you have the experience and go to a real studio. And I actually encourage people to do that all the time. Like, I wouldn't have learned a lot of things if I hadn't had that experience. And like, yeah, I'm totally with you there. And on that topic real quick. Oh, yeah. Go
I was just going to chime in really quick there, too. It's like, you talked about this chain that I'm talking into right now. Like, I see a lot of people out there commenting on the internet, and they're like, I don't need that, and it's one of those things where, we know that this mic is like $30,000 and most people can't afford it, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. And it doesn't mean that you only have to ever use an SM7 because it's the best mic in the world and yada, yada, yada. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's another reason why I encourage people to do that, is because, places like this, we have all that equipment, and there may not be another way for you to hear it.
Yeah.
And you should at least hear something before you maybe pass judgment on it.
Absolutely.
And I know there's a lot of opinions like that mic preamp thing that just happened a little while ago. So there's a lot, there's a lot of like weird information out there, and people tend to like believe what they're told.
Yeah.
And, I think until you've recorded through a Neve in a room with a bunch of vintage mics, like you don't get to have an opinion on that.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, it's this weird, man, this whole preamp thing. But like, the difficulty is if you're trying to educate people in any way, shape, or form, be it through content or like a coaching or like sharing your knowledge or whatever, it's so hard. Because if you tell the truth, it's rarely black and white. But that is not really sexy or like polarizing, and it's not like the stuff that really takes off on the internet, but it's still the truth.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to be like, all preamps sound the same, or to say you have to have this expensive thing because otherwise you'll never be able to make great music. Those are statements that are, you're going to have more success with those types of statements, but they're both wrong. And the boring middle ground is where the truth is, and the whole "it depends" kind of thing. That's the truth, but that's also not what people find interesting online. That's what makes it so difficult,
Yeah.
It's like
maybe I should start a YouTube channel called "It Depends."
Yeah, but it's like that, and we are often. And I ignore this advice a lot, but we're often told like that. Sometimes some advice we offer is like too vanilla, or like we need to be more polarizing and more clickbaity or whatever. But I don't want to do that because that's not the reality of making records. And of course, we encourage people that they can make good records even if they don't have the money for expensive gear, because it's true, you can do that. But that doesn't mean that the expensive gear is not good or better, and it does it's...
Yeah, I know. It's like you could talk about this for 10 years, Again, we all have our taste, right? So I happen to, have a particular chain that I like for certain things, and that may never change, It's kind of hard to beat a 57 on a Marshall cab, through a Neve. It's just, there's a reason why that works. And, you can try different stuff, different mics and whatever. They're just different sounds, but, there's a reason why people tend to use the common things that work. And it's good that in that sense, if you're a guitar player and you're recording yourself at home, like you have to spend $100 on a mic. It's awesome. You don't really, you don't need a really expensive microphone. If you're a singer, it might be different. I personally think, there is no right mic for, there is no like holy grail mic for everything. If you're a singer, you need to find the mic that works for you.
Yeah.
And so even now, like I know how this 47 sounds, I know how our 251 sounds, but if I get a vocalist in, I still put up a couple different things because you don't know how their voice is going to react to the specific microphone.
Yeah.
Same thing with compressors and, all that. Like, in my opinion, there's no better compressor than the 1176. It's my favorite. I'll use it on everything. But that doesn't mean that you have to do that. I think everybody should try different stuff,
Yeah.
and form their own opinions. Yeah. Maybe I'm just... Yeah. That's my "it depends," I guess. It's like...
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful that you see it like that and share it, because, in honesty, everyone who we've talked to who really knows what they're doing and they're making actual records, they have that kind of opinion. It's very rare that you see these like, it's like that period. Like, if you know what you're doing, you know that there's not this one way to do things.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between a content creator who's doing it for the sake of content or someone who's serious about making records and does that all the time. Yeah.
I like to do a lot of things in the analog world too, I think distortion is best done analog.
Yep, agree.
It doesn't mean that you can't do it the other way, but yeah, I like
you have to work harder to make it work sometimes.
I like to, I like to put crush stuff through different guitar pedals and create sounds that way, or just completely cave the console in sometimes. One of the really cool sounds is like a bass DI just through a Neve turned up all the way. And then you turn your fader down and it's like a really cool fuzz tone, and if that's the sound you want, like it's pretty great. And I don't know that you can really do that with a plugin. Maybe you get close, but it's not as easy. You can't just plug it in and turn the knob up.
Yeah, what I feel like, and that might be my personal opinion or taste, but like when I compare my actual 1073s with like plugin versions of that, it's like there's a gradual saturation, and I can like, and it's like I can push it much harder and it still sounds smooth, whereas the plugin at some point pretty suddenly craps out and just starts farting in a way. It's like this weird farty kind of low end and crackling, and it just craps out, and it's a pretty sudden like transition where. Yeah, same with the distressor. I love the UAD distressor and other emulations of that, but like if I push my real distressor, it can almost sound like a guitar amp in a way that the plugin doesn't.
Well, it's another reason why I think it's important for people to actually get into a studio at some point. Yeah. Because if you never hear the real thing and use it in person, then you don't know what your plugin really is doing, right?
Yep.
Because how many different Neve plugins are there out there? It's like crazy.
Yeah.
Same thing with like the 1176. There's like 10 different versions of it, and they all sound a little different. But
just like the hardware does.
unless you've used the hardware, you don't know which one sounds right. And I don't know. I just think.
But then again, if you have 10 different hardware 1176s, they will also sound a little different.
Yeah, they'll all sound a little different. Yeah. But I don't know. I just think that's kind of important to get in front of the gear that your plugins are emulating, just to hear them,
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to add, like, just for people, because I'm not saying that everyone now needs to spend a ton of money and have and buy all this stuff. But what we're saying is, if you really want to know what it's supposed to do and like what it could sound in the real world, like that is the experience is worth it. And then also there are ways to do it in the box. I'm primarily in the box now, and I can get those sounds, but I have to work a little harder, or I cannot assume that if I just put the same plugin on, it will sound the same. I might have to do a couple extra steps or do another way, find another way to make it work. It's possible, but it's different. And and like, I don't want to discourage people from making records in the box, of course. Like, you can totally do it, but it's not the same as the analog thing. And there's a lot of education to be had and a lot of lessons to be learned if you heard the real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that hits the nail on the head. It's like the experience, the learning experience of doing it, even if you're not in a position to be at a place like this every day, you can still take some stuff away from that experience.
Yeah, agreed. Manel, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. One of them related to this topic, and is that Kyle, you mentioned that you have, some go-tos for certain things like the overheads placement. You mentioned like the guitar you use for certain things and whatever. But you also mentioned that you like to try different microphones and stuff like that, depending on the singer. And also you mentioned previously that back in the day, bands could spend like months in the studio. So that makes me guess that probably back in those days, there was more room to experimentation, right? So what I want to ask you is, nowadays in your productions, how much room is there for experimentation versus using your go-tos?
Again, it depends on the amount of time you have. It depends on how cool the producer is, or if the artists have patience or not. Some artists are very patient. Some artists are not. So I think that's another one of the things about being adaptable and kind of reading the room. I've been in the room with artists that just want everything to work yesterday, and nothing could be fast enough. Like, you could be, lightning fast and it's still not fast enough. Or I've been in the room with people that are the polar opposite, where they're like, we just want you to do whatever you want to do. We want you to make it sound the way that you want it to sound. And then there's everything in between, right? So the quick 1-day sessions where people are coming in to cut vocals or whatever, you tend to just throw up whatever is going to sound good no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever's going to be quick and whatever's going to be kind of like, solid. It's not going to go down in the middle of the session. Maybe don't pick something vintage for a session like that. I love this mic, but the tube is 70 years old, and at some point it could just die. Hopefully not, but it does happen. Like the vintage equipment does go down once in a while, and you got to deal with it. So maybe in that situation, I wouldn't do something like that. But yeah, if you got a week, 2 weeks in the studio, and you're gonna cut drums or whatever, you have time to experiment. I think it's really just about time, right? So if you have enough time, I think people are a lot more open to it. If you're on a time crunch and you only have a day, then you don't really have time to experiment with stuff. You just got to get it, and it's got to sound good right off the bat.
So I guess back then there was more experimentation.
I would say probably that's accurate. I mean, a lot of those producers are still around. I mean, they would be able to tell you maybe better than I, but yeah, I think, there was a lot more time to mess around with different things, different drum sounds. You maybe had 2 different kits. You have, I love to do that when I get the chance. I'll put like a small little trap kit, like kick, snare, hat in the booth. That'll be dead, mono, maybe old school, compress it that way, and then have the big kit in the room with the big giant drum sounds and stuff like that. Sometimes, I'll go out on a limb and be like, you know what? I've never heard this thing before. It sounds like it won't work. Let's try it. I love trying stuff that I don't think is going to work. Like, for example, I did, this was years ago now, but I tried like the coffee can trick where I put a coffee can in front of like a kick drum and then ran the string through the like tube pass through from the live room into the ISO booth, and then stuck a mic in the other coffee can on the other end of it, and it was a pretty cool sound. But I thought it was going to sound like crap, and it did, but it was really cool.
Good way.
So I just like every once in a while try to do weird stuff like that. I like resonators. I like things that have a tone. Metal buckets or glass jars or, anything that kind of has like a ring to it. You can get some really unique sounds that way. I don't know. I just say play around.
Yeah.
If you have the time.
Oh, that's the best part of it. Like, Manel, before you joined the team, we were at an audio event in Hamburg in Germany, and they were putting us like instead of a hotel, they were putting us on a boat, and that boat had a studio on it. Like, it was a floating studio on a houseboat, and actually a pretty decent one. And the first thing we did there, like, we recorded a bunch of drum samples there and did a little bit of experimentation. And the first thing we did is we put a mic everywhere, and like you said, everything that would resonate, every weird thing that was on this boat, we tried putting a mic there and in the weirdest corners and stuff, just because that's the fun part,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah. I love doing stuff like that, and I think that's kind of where you said experimentation, but yeah, if you have the time, you got to get weird.
Yeah. And the other question that I have, also related to what you just said, that you've worked with a lot of different people, like different artists, different producers with a lot of experience and not that much experience. So the question here would be more like, after years and years of working with different people, do you notice little things that straight away tell you if, for example, the guitar player is experienced or not, or if the singer is experienced or not, or the producer?
Oh yeah.
That was quick.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of tell a lot of things right away. I think one of the Well, I mean, everybody's different, obviously, but there are some indicators. Like if your guitar player isn't playing guitar all the time, they might be a little nervous, or they might not, be the best guitar player. Let me put it that way. All the best musicians that I work with, that I've been around, like they play all the time, So I think that's a pretty good indicator of experience level. I'm not sure how to answer the rest of your question.
Yeah, I mean, those kind of things, like whenever a singer comes into your room and you see something like, I don't know, singers that actually warm up,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's different ways to go about it too, because some singers don't really need to warm up. I've been around some singers that just, they open their mouth and what comes out is incredible.
Yeah.
And then there's other people that need to warm up for an hour before they can do it properly. I would say probably more so in the rock world, because if you're singing at a high level, like volume wise, and also like some people scream, if you're doing that kind of stuff, like you have a pretty limited amount of takes you can do before your voice is just kind of trashed, unless you're really well trained and you really know what you're doing. Yeah, you just kind of have a limited window. So maybe, that's something to consider when you're working with different artists, is like, what kind of music is it? Is it like screaming metal, or is it like soft jazz? Like they both have the musicians take different approaches, right?
Yeah. And what about like the way they behave in the studio? Like, as you said before, you also need to learn when not to talk, and when not to like try to sort of introduce your own ideas. Is there any experience you can tell us about about a situation where it got weird?
Yeah, I mean, these are tough. Like I don't, obviously can't name any names or anything.
No.
But yeah, there are situations where you feel like you're more welcome than others, if that makes sense. Like certain, again, I kind of feel like you can tell right away whether your opinion is wanted or not, and you can just kind of tell from how people introduce themselves to you, and whether they look you in the eye, or whether they look away, or whether they're like, they shake your hand and ask for a water immediately, or something like that. It just, again, you just got to read the room. And yeah, I mean, there's been some situations that where I kind of felt like I was just running the computer, Those aren't my favorite situations to be in. I like being more part of the team, and I like being, that's why I tend to like working with rock bands, because you feel like you're more part of the sound. You feel like you're more part of the, part of the band, part of the team while you're making a record, as opposed to like, say like a pop vocal session or something where you're just kind of running Pro Tools at that point. And it's not everybody. It's just like, in general, I feel like that's kind of more the thing.
Yeah, so I think that's probably like part of the skill you also mentioned before about being able to adapt to every situation. And that's also something that it's really interesting, because you never get taught stuff like that at school. You really need to live it to like learn it. Right?
Yeah, you just have to experience it. And for me too, like that's not something that I feel like I'm particularly good at. I like working with live musicians. I like working with bands. I love making jazz records. They're super fun to work on. The musicianship is usually outstanding. And everybody's always really cool. And then in other situations, if it's more of just like a vocal pop session or something like that, like sometimes it's really cool. Other times I feel like I'm not really the right guy for the job. So it's also part of knowing when to maybe just say no and be like, there's probably a better person for this. And, I know some people don't really have that luxury and they just kind of have to take whatever comes. But if you can and you feel like you're not the best guy for the job, like, or girl, maybe you're right. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a chance. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. That kind of answers your question about that.
Yeah, totally. I think it's also a very important skill to know when to say no to whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be good at everything, right? So
yeah,
I'd rather focus on the things that I'm good at and put my energy there than, kind of take some work away from somebody else that might be better at it than I am.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you want to serve the artist or the producer or whoever is coming to you. And sometimes that means letting someone else do the job so that they can get the better result. That's also serving people. And it can backfire if you don't do that, or it can benefit you if you do that. So, Yeah, totally. One thing you mentioned in answering these questions, or in the beginning when you talked about experimentation thing and more time at the studio, I guess part of the more time at the studio thing was also not just tone experiments, but like being able to do not just the actual tracking session, but pre-production or creating the songs themselves in the studio more than these days. And like pre-pro is another one of those things that is so important in my opinion, and that we do a lot with the artists. Yeah, that we work with, and we try to help them not just with the coaching, but also even if I'm purely mixing these days, with the exception of like 1 or 2 projects a year that I'm co-producing or so. But like whenever I feel like there's no proper pre-production being done, or people are just not prepared, we always like help people a lot with that. It's one thing that in the DIY world just gets ignored a lot as well. And I guess having the luxury and the time and the budget to do that with really great people at a good studio is like it makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
And I guess that was part of it, right? When there was more time at the studio, that happened as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, a lot of people would, back in the day, they would come in and write the whole record here. That doesn't happen as much. But like to your point about it being overlooked more in the home recording situation, I think it's mainly because the line between demo and record has been blurred so much over the last, let's say, 10 to 15 years. Whereas back then you made demos, and then you would use those demos to make the record, right? To shape the record. Now a lot of people just use the demo, and that becomes the record.
Yeah. And they hear stories of like great artists who said something like, we that track from the demo ended up being on the record, and that was a thing, of course, every once in a while. But they hear this and then they think, well, if that artist did it, then I can use all the takes from my demos and just turn them into the record, which is not always the best idea. It's like
right. It's probably not always. I mean, but you can. The thing about music is that you really can do whatever you want. So, it's just how accessible it's going to be to people when they listen, right? So maybe your demo track you think is really cool, but when people hear it, they're like, they don't care. So that's a big part of like, having that distinction. That's why it is good to have an outside engineer or an outside producer, another set of ears, because like, you may think your demo guitar is awesome and it's really garbage, and you need 3 other people to tell you that because otherwise that's going to be your record,
Yeah.
Going back to like blurring the line, I do think it's really important to do the pre-production still. And maybe, maybe make your demos old school. Maybe don't make your demo in a DAW. Maybe just go on eBay and buy a tape recorder, a little crappy voice memo thing or whatever, and make your demos that way. And that way you have 2 separate things instead of like, okay, I have Pro Tools or Ableton or whatever, and I just made my song that way, and that's the demo, and now we're going to make the record, and you're just going to keep working off of that. Like, maybe that works for some people, but I don't know. I kind of think it's worth having a separate demo that you've kind of worked out with your band, especially if you're a band. I would hope you're working stuff out together. It's one of the things that I encourage people to do is like work stuff out in a room with your band. Like, get your drummer into a garage or something and like stand there in front of them and stare at them while you're playing, you know. Technology is great, but there's some things, especially in rock music, like there's some things that that doesn't translate, right? So working stuff out as a band together, recording yourself, video tape yourself, watch your rehearsal back, like try to become self-editor, try to, you know, recognize when you suck and when you don't, and you know, work that stuff out. I'm sure there are a lot of people that still do that, but just for like the younger generation that are like kind of just getting into it, I think that's like really important to think about.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. Honestly, it's the number one problem that we're dealing with when with the artists with the DIY artists that we work with, that it becomes this one. And I'm not saying it's not possible. Like, some people, it works for some people, but in general, the idea that you start with a demo, with an idea of a song, and then this project turns into the final thing, it very rarely works for people, because when they're in the purely creative mode in the beginning, they get way too soon. They get all caught up in all the options and possibilities in the DAW, instead of focusing on the song and how they're playing it and all that kind of stuff. So that goes back to your argument about like maybe buy a multi-track recorder or just a voice memo thing or whatever, because then you don't have these options and the distractions. And then on the other hand, once they get into like the crafts phase or whatever we want to call it, when it gets a little more technical and you want to get the engineering right, and then let alone the mixing and all of that, they go back too much again to the original idea, and they keep tweaking this. Yeah, exactly. Demoitis, or they keep tweaking the song forever when they should actually, like, they're never really, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is they never really focus on one part of the process fully. Like, when they're supposed to be mixing, they're still editing. When they're editing, they're still changing the song. And then when it's almost done, they go back and swap out a part. And there's always room for a little bit of that if you have a fantastic idea, but being able to constantly do everything at all times is not always good. It's oftentimes a distraction, and it's what makes people never finish their projects and never really focus on anything. And so I'm absolutely with you there, and that the separation is important. And the difficulty is that when someone hears that, to them it sounds like this unnecessary, tedious extra step where I have to create a new session for this, or I have to use a different tool, or why can't I just go with the flow and stay in the thing that I started? But the reality is that it oftentimes, most of the time actually, it takes them longer to do this, the seemingly easier thing, compared to just separating out the steps and fully focusing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, also you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. As I'm saying, it works for some people, and you can. But
I don't think it's always the best idea. You know, there's no wrong answers, obviously.
Yeah.
What works for Mac DeMarco isn't going to work for somebody else. So, like I said, everybody's different. I feel like if you know yourself as an artist, if you know your habits, right? Yeah. So like, try to break out of your habits, where if you know you're going to start writing a song and then an hour into it, you're obsessing over the snare drum tone, like, just try to recognize that, you know, and maybe walk it back, or maybe get up and walk away, you know. But again, you know, maybe that's really important for the song. It's so different for everybody. I just think specifically for rock bands and younger rock bands that are getting into it now, like, just play together. Like, get your guitar out, get into a garage somewhere, and, you know, play physically in the same room. I think with technology now, the way it is, people tend to like sit in their own bedroom and then they do a Zoom call like this, you know? Yeah. And it's like, hey, what about this idea? And they, it's like there's some the drummer playing on like a pad or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or maybe they don't even do that. Maybe it's like the guitar player that writes everything and programs all the drums, and then they try to go into the studio, and then it's like, well, the drummer doesn't know the song because they never played it together, right?
And
so,
yeah.
Anyway, you can kind of get around that, I think, is a good idea.
Oh, man, totally. The amount of times when I was still doing full production at my small studio, the amount of times that the band would come here before I kind of enforced the pre-production thing more heavily, like the amount of times that they would start to record, and then it would be a situation like, what do you mean we're land on the one here? Like, I always played this a little earlier, and like, why is that kick drum hit there? Don't we play it like this? And then everybody strums a little differently, and I'm like, how did that not come up in band practice? Well, the answer is oftentimes because they don't hear themselves properly, and if they don't record it, sometimes things slip through the cracks or whatever. But the answer is they didn't do pre-production and they didn't record a demo.
A lot of times the answer is they don't know how to listen to each other too.
Or that, yeah.
It's like if you spend most of your time practicing in your room by yourself, you don't really know how to listen properly, right? So I see it all the time with like drum patterns that don't go with the vocals. Guitars and bass aren't playing together. They're all kind of feel like they're doing their own thing. Another thing I kind of notice a lot is people writing in the wrong key for the vocalist.
Oh, that's Manel's topic.
Yeah. Like if your song is like too low, then you can't get the right amount of power out. If it's too high, you can't hit the notes. And then specifically in metal and like heavy rock and stuff, people feel the need to tune down as low as possible to be heavy, which doesn't really make any sense. A lot of Nirvana was in E, so like you don't have to tune your guitar to B flat. You don't have to like it doesn't make your music any heavier. Yeah. If your vocal isn't right, So that's a big part of it, finding the right key for each song. Vocalists tend to get married to their melodies as well. Sometimes the verse melody is the same as the chorus melody, and you're like, well, you don't have a chorus. So you got to go back and write a chorus. Or the chorus, I don't know, like I said, there's no rules really, but there kind of are. Sometimes they'll write the chorus lower than the verse, and it's like when the chorus hits, it feels like it drops off a cliff. Yeah, I just think those are really important pre-production things that don't really get addressed a lot now because of the way people make music. They tend to just do what is comfortable or do whatever somebody else did because that's what they were told.
Or what seems to be a great idea, but then turns out it's not, and they don't realize. It's like one of my favorite things is when they go into the chorus and then they feel like, because they want to make it more exciting or give it a lift, and then they go on the bass guitar, they go an octave up or something, and then the chorus loses the entire weight of the low end, and it seems like a good idea, but maybe it's not, and like those are things you figure out in pre-production, like you said, and
I think the key of the song is really important. I mean, that's the biggest one. You got to find the right key for the vocalist. If your vocalist doesn't sound good, then you probably should play jazz. If your voice isn't in the right key, then your song's not gonna hit. It's not gonna hit hard. Like,
what do you think about the tempo?
Tempo. I mean, obviously tempo is a big part of it too. I feel like you can get away with a little bit more tempo wise, but play with it, That's another one of the reasons why it's like, it's kind of important to maybe not make a demo in a DAW. Like maybe make your demo free, and then you go back and you listen to it and you go, oh, it felt really good here. And you like tap that tempo out. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like this is the tempo for the song. The chorus feels really good here. And then when you do your record, you want to do it to a click. Like, use that tempo. It all seems kind of obvious, really, but when you start doing computer music, really, a lot of that stuff just kind of doesn't get addressed. It doesn't pop into your head really.
Yeah.
Default is 120 when you open your DAW.
Yeah.
So you're like,
Yeah.
all your songs are at 120.
Yeah. I love all of that. Like, one of my favorite things to do was with the band to put them in the room together before we start recording, and then let them play the song a couple of times as a band, free. And like you said, and then we were listening back to, if they hadn't done that before, and then we were listening back to those takes, and then we would pick the one that felt the best, and then I would just create a tempo map based off of that, and like, just smooth it out a little bit and leave it. But like, because again, some people are not aware that you can have tempo changes and you can have all these things. But like, it also goes back to pre-production. So I love everything about you saying there.
I mean, that's a lot of work, but
yeah,
if you want to do it, it's I go back and analyze songs that came out of our studio too. Like sometimes the chorus bumps up 1 BPM. And then when the verse comes back in, it drops back down to like, 91 to 92. And like, that's definitely something that people used to do a lot.
Yeah.
Just that one extra thing can really, change the way a song feels. People don't really tend to do that much now.
Nah, not that much, yeah. Manel's favorite feedback that I always see in our coaching portal is when someone wants feedback on their demo or their pre-pro before they start tracking. Most of the time when I see Manel's feedback there, he starts with like, have you tried a different key? It's like, it's so funny you mentioned that because it's so often the case. Yeah.
Yeah. And like sometimes you need somebody else to tell you like, hey, have you tried another key? This isn't really working,
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Yeah, it's great.
Man, after all this talk about like, the differences or the challenges with like self-production and all that. And I mean, obviously we call it the Self-Recording Man podcast. And I come from a DIY background. I grew up in the punk rock, hardcore kind of scene. And we learned a lot ourselves. And that's how I never had a job in my life. I didn't go the path that you went through. I just started it at some point after learning from mentors. But like, I obviously believe in the DIY thing, or it's like, it's important to me, and I know that you can't compare like a DIY home recording situation to something like NRG, of course, and all the things we talked about. But my question here for you, Kyle, and this is kind of maybe a little bit of a loaded question almost, but to what extent do you actually believe in self-recording? Like, do you believe in that concept at all? And if so, to what extent or under which circumstances? And a lot of it has already been answered, I guess. But I really want an honest take on this, because not everybody thinks it's a good idea ever to record your own record at home, and that's a fair opinion, So I'm just interested in hearing your thoughts on this.
I would tend to disagree with that. I mean, a lot of great records were made that way.
Yeah.
But I think they were also made by very specific types of people, Yeah. That being said, like Prince was famous for recording his own vocals, Yeah. There were probably a lot of other people that did that. Pretty sure Ray Charles used to do it too.
I never heard of that, but it could be. Yeah.
There's a good story that Jay, the owner, tells when he was working with Ray back in the 80s. And he came in and he's like, hey, show me where the tape machine is. And he like took him by the hand and like showed him where all the buttons were. And he was like, cool, I'm going to do this myself. So
wow,
he might be able to confirm or deny that. But I seem to remember that story. And so it's not to say that like you shouldn't do it. I think everybody should do it. I mean, I do it at home. I have a little like Tascam 388 on my desk, and that's whenever I'm sitting at home just banging away on something, that's what I'm recording it with. I tend
do
to
you make your own music? Sorry to interrupt.
I do for myself. Yeah. I mean, I keep that for me, because like every aspect of my life is based around doing this professionally. And so like, who knows? Maybe I'll put something out at some point, but like I just do it for myself really, because it's like, it keeps music fun.
Very interesting. You do that, and you still have the energy and you just. Well,
maybe that's why I never
to make music.
Maybe that's why I never do it fully, because like my energy is pretty limited.
Yeah.
but yeah, like when I'm just messing around at home, I'll do it that way. And I think there's definitely merit to both ways. Maybe I'm a little biased about being in the big studio too, but personally, I think it's a better way of recording. That being said, you can combine the two in any way, shape, or form that you want. So that's why I would, like I said earlier, I'd encourage people who are recording themselves to go find a studio and book a day. And if you got 4 or 5 guys in your band, like you can all scrape together a couple $100 and split it. It's not like, I don't think it's going to make you go broke. And, maybe go cut your drums in a good room and then go home and finish everything else. I know a lot of people that do that.
But just to give people like realistic expectations too, when you say a couple of $100, you can't make like a full length album in like at a big studio for a couple $100 or so. Just that's also something people aren't. Yeah. But it's important to say because that again, if you never experienced it, people might not have any idea of what it costs to make a record. But maybe you can get in for a day and do drums.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So get in for a day, cut some drums or whatever else it may be. Like you may want to, experiment with some gear. You may want to use some stuff that your studio around, obviously I'm assuming people are not just in Los Angeles, right? They're all over the world doing this. So, there's a lot of different levels of studio. There's some really big ones. There's some smaller ones. There's some ones that are kind of in between. There's I know there's budget places around here. I mean, I want everybody to come record here, right?
Sure.
But, if you can't afford it, there are smaller rooms that you can go to.
Yeah.
And so if you are recording yourself at home, then great. But maybe book a day of studio time somewhere and go cut some drums and just see how that feels. Like you might dig it. Find a good engineer, find somebody that's can kind of help you elevate your sound,
Yeah.
That's one of the nice things about the technology now is that you can do that. Like back in the day, I guess if you're recording to 2-inch, it's like you got to take your reel everywhere. So, unless you have a 2-inch reel, a 2-inch machine at home, you can't really,
Yeah. And even if you had it, you would have to maintain it and all that kind of stuff.
And it's crazy. So, but now I think that's a really good way to go about it. Or if you're the opposite, maybe you program all your drums and you want to come in to a studio and have a giant collection of guitar amps to play through. I've lost count how many we have at this point.
Or do vocals in a really inspiring environment, which might get better takes out of it.
Yeah, the vibe. I mean, that's another thing we haven't really touched on, but the vibe is everything. There's a reason why the room behind me looks the way it does. They're really inspiring places to be. Some people get really nervous around stuff like that, so maybe that's not for you. But, get in front of a really nice microphone. See what that's like. Get in, a vibed out studio. You may find you get better, like you said, better takes, or you may have different ideas. You may be in the middle of it and go oh man, I have an idea for a totally new song. So, mix and match, right? Combine everything.
Yeah. We had Ken Lewis on the podcast before, and he had this thing where he has this projectors in his room where he can project pretty much anything onto the walls and in a 360 kind of degrees environment. And he would put singers in all kinds of different moods with that, which I think is such a great idea as well.
That's really cool. Yeah. Super cool. So, also, if you're a singer too, I know a lot of vocalists that I've worked with, they like to sing in the dark. So one thing that I think is another merit of working in a studio with an engineer, even if it's not a big studio, is that, you don't have a computer screen glowing in your face the whole time.
Yeah.
I don't think everybody realizes how important that the visual part of it is, and how distracting it can be. I know for me, if I am mixing, I turn the lights off in the studio, I hear things differently.
Yeah.
Or if you're singing on a mic and you're in a dark room and it's just, you and the sound, it's different. So some people like candles, some people like scents. different smells around. Like that's a big part of it too.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the like experience when you come here is, we'll cater to that. So like if you want your booth to be decked out with candles, we'll do it. If you want a specific, scent or a certain kind of snack or whatever's around, it's like to make you comfortable, we'll do that for you. So I think a lot of that kind of stuff does get lost in a home studio environment because it's like, who's going to do it? Right?
Yeah.
You. So if you're going to set up you got to set up your room, you got to set up the vibe, you got to do it all. And then an hour later, by the time you're done setting up, you like probably don't want to record anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just having that, it's an experience. Like just having that experience and doing that once, like it's such, first of all, you're going to have a great time. Second of all, you're going to probably leave with like pretty good results. And then third is like, it's a learning experience as well. So
Yeah.
Totally agree. Really cool. Like I have one more question.
Sure.
Before we get to like, we always finish up with like a little bit of a rapid fire round with like quicker questions.
Okay.
But so what was the one thing that I wanted to ask before that though? It says, So, speaking of like, of that whole, like we've mentioned a couple of times, like how valuable it is for most people to go to a studio like that and experience it. How can like smaller bands get into like NRG? Do they just contact you through the website? Can they just book it like everyone else? Is there some sort of barrier to entry? Is it because again,
Nope.
Some people might think, well, I will never get the chance to do this, and maybe it's totally doable for most people and very easy to do.
I tend to think it is. I think there's a lot of sort of like, how do I put it? Like people might be scared or like they think that they're not worthy or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'd just say like, if you want to come record here, like you can come record here. It's just a matter of like, a lot of times it's money, working in a studio like this isn't exactly cheap. But, that also being said, like you can always come to me with a budget and say like, hey, we have this much, like, what can we do?
Yeah.
I'm always willing to like, at least entertain something like that. I also always tell people like, if you book one day and you want to try to cram everything in, then that day is going to be a little bit more expensive than if you decide you want to book a full week, I can be more flexible on the rates and stuff like that too. So,
yeah,
but there's all different ways to do it. And I would just say like, don't hesitate to reach out, but yeah, you can just go to the website or call the studio or email me, don't spam me, but, but yeah, we work with indie artists all the time. Producers as well. Like a lot of times the producer will be the one to book the studio and they'll bring the bands in or they'll bring the artist in,
I think it's also really cool that you are handling this, honestly, because from my experience working in different studios, it's not always the chief engineer or someone actually making records there who handles the booking or does the studio management. Oftentimes you have a studio manager of some sort, and sometimes they're great people, of course, but sometimes I also wish like I would have more personal contact with the engineer that I might be working together with, or sometimes it depends on how good the manager is and how much they really know, but sometimes I feel like I'm talking to someone who doesn't really know much about the studio. It's like not often, but anyway, like I think it's great actually that, and pretty uncommon, at least in my experience, that the chief engineer and studio manager are kind of the same.
I think that's extremely uncommon.
But it's cool. To me, that sounds like a really good idea. Or like, I would love to talk to someone like that when I book the studio.
I mean, it's like, again, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because like,
sure,
you have to switch gears all the time and you have to like wear a bunch of different hats. But from that standpoint, if you call and you have specific questions about like the microphones and, the gear, the consoles, or which room might be best for your project. Like I talk to people about that stuff all the time. Like, in fact, I just had a call the other day about somebody potentially wanting to book for like a jazz quartet with a vocalist and, talking to them about the project the piano needs to be isolated in the booth, and they're like, which room do you think would be best? And there kind of are, I feel like there aren't a lot of studio managers that would be able to like accurately answer that question. They'd be like,
Exactly.
well, just go look at the website and figure it out, But yeah, like as a working engineer and having done a lot of live recording, stuff like that, I can, kind of recommend stuff and point you in the right direction at least, So yeah, I think it's a benefit, but
super valuable.
It's a lot
in
of
my
work.
opinion. Yeah, it is. I believe you, but it's super valuable because why not listen to the people who have spent so much time in these rooms? And I as an outside producer or engineer, I wouldn't assume that I know better where certain things sound like in certain spots in the room. Like I've heard this great piece of, I think it was Joe Ciccarelli, like one of the best to ever do it, and he said. And I'm not sure about which studio it was. It might have been even NRG, but I'm not sure. But he was like, when I go into the studio, and he mentioned a specific story in this interview, and he said like, I asked the staff engineer or the assistant or the chief engineer, whoever is there, I asked them where to set up the drums and how they typically do it, because like they know the place. And I thought that was so cool because like he obviously knows what he's doing. He's one of the best to ever do it, and he could be like, well, I know what I'm doing, but he will ask the people operating the studio because they know the place.
Yeah, I tend to do the same thing. I mean, I've been here for a really long time, but I've also freelanced around. I've worked at just about every studio in town, and other places. New York, we did a record in Milan. So like, I've been in a lot of big studios. I've been in a lot of places, and yeah, I tend to kind of do the same thing. It's like, where would you stick it? Because I don't necessarily have a month to like learn a new room. So yeah, it's a good way to do it.
Cool.
For our rooms, it's pretty obvious where the drums go because the floor is all messed up. So you can just look at the floor and you put the drums there because there's a bunch of like, gouges from the spikes.
Yeah.
But, that's part of the charm too. Like it's a kind of lived in space. Mm-hmm. Again, there's no wrong way to do it, but when you kind of come here, you can kind of figure out like, okay, this is how they do stuff. But always happy to like recommend mics or things like that. People want to know. I'm a gear nerd too, so let me know.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put the website and all that in the show notes. I mean, in this case, people will find it, but we'll still put all the stuff in the show notes, of course, so people can reach out or check the website out, and then contact you if they're interested in going there. Yeah, Manel, anything you want to add before we wrap it up with the rapid fire round at the end?
No, not really. I have no more questions.
I will just add to that. If you're a Neve fan, like this is a place to be. Because I think we're the only studio in town that has 3 Neves.
Is it 3? Is it in all 3 rooms?
Yep.
I don't even remember. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Studio B also was a Neve.
We have no shortage of Neve here. If you're a Neve fan.
Yeah. Yeah, especially for tracking. I mean, you can also mix on a Neve, but like, there was a time when like Neves were the tracking consoles and SSLs the mixing consoles.
This room
sort of thing.
Originally was built around a 9000J. Oh. And that was Jay's mixing console for years and years. And then kind of when people started mixing more in the box, we took that out and put this little Neve in behind me. So,
a great front end.
This room is a little bit more of like a production kind of overdub room now than a straight mixing room for that reason.
And mixing in the box works a lot better if you have a great front end as well. Not saying people need to buy expensive stuff, but as a mixer, I can say that stuff that has been tracked well with decisions made on the front end and people willing to make bold decisions with cool gear.
Oh yeah,
it's easier to mix those.
100%.
So
yeah, it's every time I get a record to mix and I open it up and it feels like people really like put in the work to get it to sound good is amazing. I don't like fixing stuff if I can help it.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I have to produce while I'm mixing because people just when they don't make any decision and like they just send you DIs and MIDI drums, and like
Yep.
that's the worst case, of course.
Oh,
but
yeah,
it
yeah.
happens. It happens. You'll get a session where I'm basically like, I could take this in all kinds of different directions. I have no idea what this is.
Yeah.
What this wants to sound like. You know?
Send that,
It's like,
send that shit back and be like,
yeah,
finish your album.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, it's always a treat when you get a session that's really well done and you're just like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
Like you just get to make it sound cool. That's my favorite thing.
Totally agreed. Cool. So, quick questions, and for these, just try to answer them as quickly as possible, without putting too much thought into it. I'm really interested in like the spontaneous answers to these.
I'll do my best.
Cool. Some are like obvious questions, but still interesting to me, and some maybe you didn't expect. So let's see. Your favorite piece of gear at NRG?
Ooh. Oh man, Cooper Time Cube.
Oh, didn't expect that. Cool. Yeah. A technique or a spot you found in one of your rooms that is unconventional but totally works and sounds cool to you?
Yeah, I like Studio A. This is something that I did. I'll give away all my secrets, but something I did with with Kareem years ago, where I would put the drums in the large ISO booth in Studio A, and then leave the door open and then mic the room that way. Instead of putting it in the normal corner where everything is live, I would, do like a dead booth and then mic the room. So you could close the door, open the door, could be as dead or as live as you want.
Awesome. Cool. If you were to start out again making records, what would you do? Like a quick, I don't know, give me 3, 5, or 10 bullet points, like an order of things. Like how would you approach? You know nothing, you want to be a record maker. What would you do?
Man. Quit. No, I'm just kidding.
Get a job.
Yeah, get a job. Well, first of all, maybe get a job. Figure out how to survive first and foremost. After that, I would say, and whatever that job may be, I highly recommend it being related to what you want to do. If you have to have a second job, like maybe get a job working at a luthier shop, or maybe, something related. Don't work at Starbucks, So there's that. And then I would say next is start just like studying records. Like,
oh, good point.
Listen to your favorite records and like start to train your ears, because that is probably the most valuable. Your ears are the most valuable thing, right? So start to do that. Then after that, I would say, start, if you're not already a musician, like learn an instrument. I guess we're talking about like engineering and producing, right? So yeah.
Or it could be a self-recording artist, but like, let's say someone who wants to make records, and that involves engineering, producing, whatever.
Yeah. And then, so I think obviously if you don't already play, like learn an instrument. Yeah. And then on top of that, I would just say, start figuring out what sounds you kind of like and start researching stuff. Maybe it's maybe you're a synth guy, maybe you're, you like guitar pedals, like just start collecting stuff over time. Like, even if you're just buying one thing and selling it the next day, like start listening to different sounds and just start understanding what different things sound like. There's a lot of good information out there, but also like don't rely on YouTube videos and stuff to tell you what to do. Like there's a reason why you can like demo just about every plugin on the planet for 14 days. Yeah. Do it, listen to different stuff, play around with it. And then, I guess if that, all of those things were in place, I probably still wouldn't do it any differently. I probably would still try to get into a studio, even if it's a small studio. Like, get around the people that are doing the thing that you want to do and surround yourself by those people that are better than you at it. Like, you never want to be, in my opinion, you never want to be the best guy in the room, right? Yeah. So, try to surround yourself by people that are better than you and that you can learn from, That might be the biggest one. It's like get into a place, you know, maybe it's the opposite of the home recording thing, but I would say, yeah, if I had to do it all over again, I would still get into a place where I would be surrounded by people that I could learn from and just be in the room and do it, you know?
100% agreed. Man,
And
I was
sorry, one more
go ahead,
thing.
yeah. No, yeah.
Learn how to solder a damn XLR cable.
Oh man.
Like, please just get a soldering iron. Learn how to fix your own cables. Because, if you come to work at a studio, it's a good skill to have.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the purely technical side of things
that
much. You mentioned it in the beginning as part of your path and your job there, but like, a lot of people can't do that anymore, I think. Yeah.
No, that's becoming a lost art too. That's why I said, you know, maybe if you're trying to get into it, go find a job in a related field. Like, go work for somebody who is a technician, somebody who builds studios, somebody who does wiring, somebody who does like gear repair, an amp shop or whatever, you know. Learn some of the technical side of things, because it's just going to make you more valuable in every situation as an engineer.
Oh man, so many good things.
Long-winded.
No, those are super great answers. I can't believe we didn't really talk about the whole listening thing, because that is such an important part of it, where like, you know, you gotta, like you said, train your ears, analyze, study your favorite records. That's such an important thing. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
And
I know we probably mostly talked about things from sort of the big studio perspective, but yeah,
which is great, because that's a perspective that our audience rarely hears on this podcast, and so that's why I wanted to do it. So but
if you ever want to do a short one about technical stuff, let me know, because I think that's a cool thing that a lot of people really could benefit from. Like, build your own gear. You know, I love the big gear manufacturers and stuff, but like, you know, start building your own stuff, right? Like, why give a company $4,000 for something you probably could figure out on your own? Take a lot of work, but you can save a lot of money,
and you'll learn stuff along the way about the gear. Totally.
Yeah, go online and just Google like distortion pedal kit, and just buy yourself a kit for $50. Get your soldering iron out and just build something. It'll make it'll give you this like sense of accomplishment too. You'll be like, hey, I made that. And
totally. Yeah. There's like one of my favorite engineers, producers of all time, Kurt Ballou. I don't know if you know who he is. He like the heavy music world, and he has business cards that are PCBs that he gives out to people just so they can build small pedals from them and stuff.
I've heard about that. That's pretty great. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I got to get my hands on one of those at some point.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, what I also want to just say thank you again for mentioning that, is the whole surrounding yourself with other people and try not to be the smartest in the room or the best in the room.
Or the only person in the room.
The only person in the room, yeah.
No,
absolutely. I really want people to hear this, and I'm also living proof of that. When I started to try and figure things out on my own here, alone in the room in the middle of nowhere, like I tried for 5 years figuring this out, making demos for my band, whatever. And then in the 1 year after that I decided to go to studios, travel to places, rent studios, hire people, you know, pick people's brains, pay them for their time, and like ask questions and get mentors and all that. Once I started doing that, in that 1 year after, I learned like 10 times as much as I did in the 5 years prior, where I tried to figure it out on my own. And so it's like, it sounds obvious, but we spend so much time in front of the computer and trying to figure it out with YouTube and
I'm not a huge fan of that. I mean,
no, me neither.
It's good for getting your feet wet with something, I guess. Like, there's a lot of, I would say actually, if you're gonna go that route, there's a lot of like companies that put their official like gear tutorials or whatever on their own YouTube channels. So you're actually like, you know, learning from the people that make the thing that you're trying to learn. So like, that's probably the best resource for that type of stuff. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the, you know, learn everything online. And I don't know. I'm sure some people are great at it, but to me, that just it doesn't sound like that much fun. Like I like people. I like being around people. So, any day I can not sit in my room and stare at my computer is a good one.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Cool. And now two final questions.
Okay.
Next one is the most important lesson you've learned in your career. One lesson, the most important one.
Okay, this might be a slightly two-part answer.
Yeah.
The first one is learn your client's coffee order.
Oh.
Or whatever that may be. Like, find the one thing and like learn that and make sure it's there every time, without asking. So there's a little bit of that. Like, learn how to preempt things and kind of like already have them going by the time your client shows up. So that's one. And then the other one I would say is, learn from as many different people as you possibly can. Because you're going to like take something away from everybody. And that's kind of how you build your toolbox of things. And that's how you kind of create your own sound, is like variety, So like, at least in my opinion, I think pick the gems that you like from different things and kind of like combine them all and make your own soup.
Yeah. Thanks. Perfect. That's why you're here. That's why we bring in people on to the show that are way smarter than us and that we can all learn from. So
well,
that's
I don't know
great.
about that, but okay.
And then final question. We're keeping kind of the stats on this and we'll see where this goes after a year or so. Burger or pizza?
Oh, pizza, 100%.
Damn, it's a third in a row, I think.
Yeah. Specifically pizza in Italy.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have good pizza here. Well, we do, but it's harder to find.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Awesome. Well, Kyle, is there anything you want to add, like things where we should send people to, things you want to tell people? I mean, we're going to put all the links in the show notes and all that. We talked about how to contact you or NRG. But anything else you want to tell the audience or anything we should send them to?
Yeah, I mean, obviously check out our website, nrgrecording.com. We're still here. We're still doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Check out our music. Check out the stuff that's come out of here. Like, I think a lot of people may not realize how much stuff has really been done here. We don't have the luxury of having a history that goes back to the 60s like some other places, but like it's pretty awesome. Been a lot of great records done here. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Cool. Man, thank you so much for your time. This is a long one and a good one, a really, really good one. So we might have to do a shorter technical one at some point if you're open for that.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, yeah. Hopefully that was cool. I do tend to ramble sometimes, so if you can cut things down, awesome. Feel free.
No, that was totally awesome.
I don't think that technical one is gonna be short.
No, it may not be. No, I mean, for what that's worth, like I had some mentors and stuff, but like, I taught myself a lot of that too.
Yeah.
So, I definitely had some good teachers along the way, but I think the main reason why I'm able to maintain this place and keep it up and kind of like keep it going is because I had to teach myself how to do all that out of necessity. The console went down, I had to fix it. There was nobody else to do it. So it's like, okay, you make a couple phone calls and, I have people that I can call and ask questions and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm the one doing it. So, yeah. Anyway.
Again, important skill, you said.
Get your feet, get your feet
figure
wet.
it out.
Get your hands dirty.
Yeah,
maybe I should have said that. Maybe I should have said that. Yeah, get your hands dirty. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. Shock yourself a couple of times with 300 volts inside of a guitar amp. That's always fun.
Please don't.
Yeah, well, don't do it on purpose. But fortunately, it only happened to me once, and I think it'll probably won't happen again.
Yeah. Was it unplugged and you still got shocked? The typical thing.
Oh
with
no, it
tube
was
amps?
on when I did it.
It was on.
Yeah.
Oh, even better.
I was measuring things and my hand slipped. But
oh damn.
always keep, when you're doing that, the big one is always keep one hand in your pocket.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, don't use both hands.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to complete that circuit through your heart.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
There's the
Thanks. That's a great survival tip here at the end.
The survival tip. Well, cool. Are we good? Are we done?
Yeah, we're done. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to this show. As always, you can find both the video and the audio version of this. So if you're discovering this on your podcast app, there's a video version on YouTube and vice versa. So if you want to not just hear us but also see us and see the beautiful room behind Kyle, then go to YouTube and check it out there. And we'll talk to you next week. And Kyle, thank you again. It's been a pleasure. It's been awesome. And
Of course.
Yeah,
it was my pleasure.
That's all I can say, really.
Hopefully there was some useful crap in there.
Cool. There was. Thanks, Manel, also. There's gonna be some crap.
Yeah.
Thanks, Manel, also for your time as always. And so bye-bye.
All right.
Goodbye.
Take care.
Take care.